Well, obviously, I'm very encouraged about it. I think it is late in the day for us to be meeting with the Kurdistan government. I've, as you know, been a strong supporter of Kurdistan independence when the Kurds were heroically fighting against the ISIS in Iraq. They were one of the few people that had the courage to fight off ISIS, a terrible evil that ISIS was perpetrating on the nation of Iraq and really the world. And as you may know, when I was in Congress in the Armed Services Committee, I offered the amendment to send direct military aid to Kurdistan, to the Kurds directly, because as it was going through the Iraqi central government, much of the aid wasn't arriving. And the Kurds, again, had just shown such courage. And so I am probably one of the strongest supporters of the Kurds that you can ever imagine, because I've seen them do such noble things in the past. They've continued to maintain a strong relationship with Israel, with good foreign relations with Israel. And I am convinced that Kurdistan should have complete authority to sell their own oil on the market as they choose. Again, they've just demonstrated to the whole world a commitment to peace, a commitment to trying to stand alone in their capability as a nation. And I believe they should be allowed to do that. The challenge that Kurds have more than anything else, of course, is the Iranian proxy wars against them. And I was the first member of Congress to call for Iran to be referred to the Security Council probably somewhere 15 years ago because of their pursuit of nuclear weapons capability and because of the terrible things they were doing to foment terrorism in the world. And the Kurds, again, have been the brunt of some of the Iranian insurgency, their proxy wars where they're supporting Hamas and Hezbollah. And I mean, it's just an overall challenge, but they have met the challenge, and no one holds the Kurds and Kurdistan in general in higher esteem than I do. Right. No, I think that's probably not the opinion of Mr. Biden. I think Mr. Biden is committed to the present construct of trying to do everything through the Iraqi central government. And I certainly wish the Iraqi central government the best. But the reality is the Kurds have demonstrated an incredible courage, and America should recognize them for that and for other reasons. And we should recognize their independence, in my judgment. And that may sound like a very forthright position, but I'm convinced it's important for the peace in the region and the peace of the world ultimately, because the Kurds have shown perhaps more than any other Arab country their willingness in the Middle East peace process, especially as it relates to Israel. And of course, I'm a very strong supporter of Israel. And the reality is that when you find a people that have shown such a noble, valiant courage as have the Kurds, you recognize that. You should recognize that, because indeed that is the substance of being able to go forward as a free people in the world, as free nations, and begin to build freedom across the lines of geopolitical demarcation. And I'm just convinced that the Kurds have just shown an enormous amount of willingness and courage and wisdom. And I am completely on their side to try to help them go forward. And whether that's the oil production and their ability to sell it themselves, or that's the ability for America to interact directly with them, whether it's just military aid or even, yes, go ahead. Well, I guess I'm going to wait and see whether they follow through. As you know, when I offered the amendment to offer Kurdistan direct military aid, we were able to get it in the House side. And when it went over to the Senate side, the Obama administration took it out. They worked to try to take it out, and they were successful. And it took us another year to get that aid to the Kurds. So I'm just not sure that I trust the Biden administration to do the right thing here. They have shown an incredible willingness to back off and just to take a lackadaisical approach on everything. And so I would call upon the Biden administration to stand strong for the Kurds and to realize what an important ally they are to America, and how important they are to the Middle East process, and how important it is to help them be successful as a nation and a government. And I think it remains to be seen what the Biden administration will do in this regard. And I just hope that you're correct. I hope they will stand strong and do what they should. I just have not been able to develop the conviction or the confidence that they will do that. Yeah, I just might say I would agree with that completely. I agree with the gentleman that if the prime minister there of the Iraqi central government comes to Washington, that he should recognize a separate and equal station that the Kurds should have. One of the most dangerous terrorist states in the world, perhaps the most dangerous, is Iran. And the Kurds have stood up against Iran and their proxies in a courageous way, and they have certainly suffered for that, where Iran has actually fomented attacks directly on Erbil. And again, the Kurds continue to show this kind of courage. And it's about time somebody recognizes the way that the Kurds have handled themselves and recognizes their right to have the freedom to be able to sell their own oil and to have their own government autonomy. And I would just suggest to you that's not just important for the Kurdish people, that's important for the people in the region and ultimately the peace and stability of the entire world. If Iran gains a nuclear weapons capability, we can't even imagine the kind of challenges that the peace and security of the world will face. And the Kurds have been one of the groups that have been courageous time after time after time to stand up against the Iranian proxies. And the American people are grateful to them, and the American government should recognize it and act accordingly. Well, I'm not satisfied at all. I don't think America has made the kinds of overtures to the Kurds that they should have. I think that that in this effort to try to run everything through the Iraqi central government, all they do is, as the gentleman said, they strangle the Kurds and they strangle Kurdistan, and it does not have a good outcome. So I'm not satisfied at all. If I do become successful and come back to Congress, I will be an unrelenting advocate for the freedom of Kurdistan, because I truly believe it's important to the world, and I believe that it reflects an importance on America's own national security. You know, when we see Hamas, a proxy of Iran, doing the horrible things that they are against Israel, that is something that could catalyze a broader war, and that implicates America and implicates the whole world. And so it's sometimes it's important for us to get to these issues while they are still in a nascent stage, and while we can still deal with them without a great conflagration, a great difficulty. And so I'm going to continue to be an advocate for the Kurds. I'm going to continue to recognize their courage and their noble actions in the world. And I hope that the Biden administration will find their tongue and their courage to respond and do what's right by the Kurds. Well, I mean, I think the White House cannot help but be aware of the grave challenges facing the Kurds. I think that they've just decided to try to take sort of a neutral perspective and stay with the convention of the moment. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. I hope, as I say, I hope the White House stands up and does what's right toward the Kurds. I mean, I tried to do everything I could to encourage the Trump administration and the Obama administration. I had no success with the Obama administration, but we tried, I think, successfully to have a big impact on the Trump administration's recognition, a greater recognition, not to where it would satisfy me, but a greater recognition for the courage of the Kurds. And I keep mentioning that word courage, but that has been synonymous. That has the Peshmerga and the Kurds have personified courage. When no one would stand up against ISIS coming in and beheading and burning alive people and doing horrifying things, the Kurds stood strong, even though they didn't have the military equipment and supplies that they needed. They did the best they could, and they stood against ISIS. And in some ways, they stood alone against ISIS. And to me, it was a disgrace that the rest of the world didn't stand there by there and help the Kurds fight the ISIS when they were being so courageous and doing so themselves. There's no question about that. The Americans, if they just told the central government of Iraq, listen, we're going to recognize the Kurds. We see them as an ally. We see them as important to the process. And we're tired of having them strangled by their own central Iraqi government. And so, yes, I absolutely believe that the White House has the capability to do that. And, you know, just for the record, I don't forget the way that America has protected Iraq and ultimately, to some significant degree, the Kurds. When Trump came in, you know, the ISIS was just running rampant, and no one thought that there was any way to stop them. but Trump stopped them. He eradicated them, and now we don't hear very much from ISIS anymore. And I think if he becomes president again, and I pray he does, I think that ISIS and other radical elements of the jihadist movement and the jihadist mindset, the terrorists in the world, will try to find a hole and get the hell out of the way, because they will find that there's another president back in the White House that means business and is courageous enough to protect the peace and security of the region, and thus the peace and security of the United States of America. Well, I would just say, I don't want to jump in here, but I agree with everything the gentleman has just said from the beginning to the end. He's 100% correct. And I just hope that Mr. Barzani has great success while he's in Washington. And I will tell you, there are a lot of members of Congress that are inclined to agree with what the gentleman just articulated so well. It's almost impossible to say it any better than he did. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. God's will be done. Let's charge the gates and see what happens. Thank you.